Do you need to register your LLC into multiple states? A lot of people are confused about where they need to register their LLC, whether they got a rental property or an operating business. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking that down and answering the question. Now, this is part 5 in my 5-part LLC masterclass series, so please make sure you subscribe to the channel. But let's break this down so you know what states you need to set up your LLC. I'm Matt Sorensen. Let's build wealth. Now, I'm assuming here in the video that you've set up an LLC already in a particular state, and you have the question of, I'm conducting business in another state. Do I need to register my LLC foreign into that other state? You can have an LLC registered into multiple states. For example, I'm here in Arizona and I've had an Arizona LLC for rental real estate that I also registered foreign into Indiana. The reason I did that is I had a rental property in Indiana, so I registered the same LLC, an Arizona LLC, as a foreign LLC into Indiana. If you're an operating business, you might be doing the same thing. I'm conducting business in another state. Do I need to register in that other state? Okay, I'm gonna go over the reasons here of why you need to make sure you're doing this properly, because there's fines and penalties and potential loss of asset protection, but also want to get into when are you required to register foreign. Let's get into the first part here of why should I be focused on this? Well, the first thing is if you don't register your LLC into the state you're actually conducting business, you can lose your asset protection benefits. Actually, if your LLC is not registered in a state and you get sued in that state, let's say you have a Wyoming LLC for a property in Florida and you have a plaintiff sue you in Florida, guess what? You can't even go into court. You have to register that Wyoming LLC into Florida for a Florida court to even recognize you. So you got to be careful about this just from asset protection and the fact of conducting business. You make sure you're registered in the state you're operating. Now I'm going to get into when this triggers and when you need to file in another state. But the first thing here is I want to make sure you understand you need to do this to make sure you're actually able to protect yourself and have the asset protection benefits, and to be able to be a legitimate company able to transact or represent yourself in court if you are sued or need to conduct business. A lot of times I've had clients with rental properties in other states and the title company won't transact with them. They won't transfer title. They're like, this LLC isn't even registered in this state, okay? So you've got to make sure that you're registering the LLC in the states where you're actually conducting business. Now, the second consideration is fines and penalties. Let's say you're in Nevada and you're conducting business into California and you have a Nevada entity. Well, the state of California will fine you up to $10,000, a maximum fine, if you don't actually register in that state when you're actually conducting business in that state. Now, I'm going to come back here again to what constitutes conducting business. That's important. But obviously, if you're servicing customers, you have an office or employees in California, and you're operating out of Nevada, even that's where you live, but you don't register into California, you are going to be subject to these fines and penalties. So again, you're gonna need to get compliant and register into that state where you're conducting business. Now, I know people hate California. They don't want to register their LLCs there because they've got an $800 annual LLC fee, no matter whether you make money or not. I know it sucks, but if you're gonna conduct business there, you gotta pay the price. You're gonna need to get registered there, and you will be subject to that $800 minimum annual fee. All right, now let's get into the critical question here of when am I required to register into another state? Well, the key consideration is, are you conducting business in that state? Now, for a rental property, it's quite simple. You have a rental property in that state that you rent to a tenant, that's conducting business. That LLC needs to be registered in that state where the property is located and you're renting to the tenant. Simple. If you're a business selling goods or services, okay, you're an operating business. Do you have employees or a storefront there? If so, you're going to need to register to conduct business. If you just have customers there and you don't have an active presence in that state, you don't need to register. But definitely if you have employees in that state, or you have a storefront or an active office in that location, you will need to register your entity to do business in that state. Remember, this is part 5 of the 5-part masterclass series on LLCs. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel to get more details on the other tips and tricks on LLCs. Also, I've got a lot of tips on protecting your assets, saving taxes, and building wealth. I'm Matt Sorensen. We'll see you next time.